Welcome back, YouTubers. Today we're going to finish up our final method for solving systems of equations. This one is going to be titled Elimination. Now, if you remember back on the lesson we did on selecting which was the appropriate method, we said that anytime that you see two equations that are both in standard form, that's when we're going to use elimination. So you can see on this first one, we've got it in standard form, both variables on the left of the equal mark and our constant on the right. We've also got the same thing on our bottom equation. I see two standard forms. That tells me it's most likely going to be an elimination style question. Now, before we go on to the actual steps for doing it, my students told me that complicated systems work out a lot better when they have an acronym to go with. So here's the acronym that we came up with. Okay, the letters are E, D, S, M, T, D. What that stands for is eliminate, divide, substitute, multiply, transpose, and then divide again. Now, the acronym that they came up with to remember that was Eric does super manly tricks daily. So after a few days of this, I asked him, how do I solve an elimination question? And there's about one or two kids always says, Eric does super manly tricks daily. And yeah, they get going on it real quick. So let's talk about what each of those means. Step one, eliminate. The way that we eliminate first is, well, all we're going to do is add the two equations together. Well, 2x plus 3x is going to give me 5x. 5y minus 5y, those two are going to cancel out or eliminate out, so there is no longer a y in the equation. Our equal mark is going to drop, and then let's go ahead and add our last ones, the two constants. Negative 24 plus 14 gives me negative 10. Now, as you can see, we've already made our equation a lot simpler. That y has completely gone away, and we're left with a system that we can solve, or an equation that we can solve. Now, that leads us right into step two, which is divide. Go ahead and divide both sides by that number in front of x. Going to cancel out and give me x equals negative 2. So first two steps, I already have one of my two answers. So half the answers are already done. Let's jump back into the next step. Step 3, substitute. Pick one of your two equations. Doesn't matter which one. If there's one that looks easier, I'll go with it, but this time it's not going to make much difference. I'll just go ahead and pick the top one. Write it down again. 2x plus 5y is equal to negative 24. And now let's go ahead and substitute the negative 2 in for the x. Now remember, when we substitute, we always put that thing in parentheses to show us what the substitution looked like and where it came from. Now our next one is going to be multiply. I'm going to multiply this one. 2 times negative 2 gives me negative 4. Plus 5y is equal to negative 24. Now my next one is going to be transpose, and the transpose we're going to do, the transpose we're going to do is on the one that doesn't have a variable on it. So this one, depending on how the substitution went, it could be either in front or in back. Go ahead and transpose that over. 5y is equal to negative 24. Now remember, transpose means move to the other side and change the sign. So negative 24 plus 4. This guy came to there. Now, it's not written in there, but we need to go ahead and simplify this. 5y is equal to negative 24 plus 4 is negative 20. And then my last step, divide. Divide by 5, divide by 5, gives me y is equal to negative 4. Now, just like always on these problems, if I have an xy pair, I want to go ahead and write it, my answer, as an xy coordinate. So I'll write it as negative 2, negative 4. And there's my answer. Now, a couple things to keep in mind. The reason that this worked out so nicely for us on this first example was because since these two had the same coefficient with different signs, they were able to eliminate. There's going to be some problems that we do in the next two videos where these numbers don't line up exactly like it is. So we'll have to do another extra step before this E. I call it a step 0 sometimes, or a beginning step. Also, please keep in mind, it could have been the x's or the y's. If instead I had this was a 2 and this one was a negative 2, then these would have canceled out instead. So we'll do another example later on where these will cancel out, the x's cancel out instead of the y's.